Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Soul Empowerment, where we do our best to try and help you shorten the distance between up here in your head and your ego mind, down here to your heart and into your soul, and to hopefully spend more time there. That's ultimately our goal here for ourselves and for everybody who watches this program. Today, we're going to be talking about one of those topics that a lot of people find stressful, challenging, painful sometimes. The idea of holidays, and we've got a whole season of holidays happening at this time of the year, and there's lots of things that go on that just can make them very, very unpleasant, and that's why we're calling this Home for the HELLidays. We'll see where it goes. We're going to do our best to share our own stories about what we have experienced in our lives as around the holidays, and maybe offer you some tips to make your holiday period more enjoyable and less stressful. Again, my name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, and I'm here in Meridian, Idaho, where I work a lot on online and virtual type connections with people. I do this program. I've got my Life Mastery TV program. I'm going to be co-leading leading. I'll be the lead author in a book collaboration that we're going to be doing and publishing next year in October. So I'm just busy, 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 and I'm enjoying it. It's a great life I have, even though maybe there are some things that could be better. And I think that's really all we can say. The other thing I say, people ask me how you're doing, and I say, well, I woke up this morning, so that means it's a good day. So anyway, I'm going to pass the torch over to Gail. Gail, please introduce yourself. Tell us where you are, what you do.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gail Nowak. I'm based out of Boston, Massachusetts, a little bit north of Boston. And I'm on a mission to redefine leadership. I'm a New Earth leader, coach, healer, and speaker, specializing in guiding leaders, in particular New Earth leaders, to embody and speak from love so that they can uplift humanity with their own unique magic. And I do that through energy first, healing centered coaching, retreats, workshops, talks, interviews like this that hopefully give you inspiration and motivation and actual support in transforming the way that you show up in the world. And I'm really excited to be talking about this topic today because I am right in the thick of it. So there'll be lots to share.
Awesome. I just have one quick question for you. I've heard you say this, and I don't think I've ever asked you about it before, but you talked about New Earth leaders. Can you just say briefly what you mean by that?
Yeah, and this is not my term. I have not coined this term or anything, but it is a term that's starting to emerge. And for me, when I think of a New Earth leader, I think of those of us who are leading with compassion and connection and courage and doing our own inner work in order to show up to life and leadership in that way.
Okay.
The other piece of it for me personally is living and leading consciously aligned to creator energy.
Beautiful.
So that's what
Yeah,
it
I
means
love
to
that.
me. I know other people have different definitions, but that's what it means to me.
Great.
Thanks for
Thank
asking.
you. And thank you. And Scott, I know that you've got some camera challenges today, but we can hear you. So please share a little bit
Thank you.
about who you are, where you are. Uh-oh, now I can't hear you.
You should be able to
Now
hear
I
me.
hear you.
Yes.
There we
Okay.
go.
The guy, right? My computer's all messed. Hi, Scott Holmes, intuitive healer, using Reiki and numerous modalities to be able to ground, clear, heal all of those things that we carry with us. The heaviness. Some call it shadow work. Some call it those traumas that we carry as children, but clearing all of that throughout the sessions that we do. Also, writing with David, speaking, and really just trying to bring understanding to everybody at the level they are to help guide them. They bring that masculine energy that seems to be missing from so many things. Thank you, and
Thank you,
apologize for the
Scott.
ping
I'm
pong.
sorry about your camera and computer challenges, but I know we're going to make this work no matter what. Next up, by no means least, is Sarah. Sarah, please tell us who you are, where you are, and what you do.
Hi, I'm Sarah, or Sarah Jane, take your pick. And I'm in the UK, South Coast in England. And I work with energy, with Reiki, with sound in the form of toning, and a technique I actually call vocal Reiki. I work with people with their inner child, with trauma, healing. And I also founded Gift of Healing TV. And sort of all three of my co-hosts here have actually joined me on programs on Gift of Healing TV, which I'm delighted to have had them as guests. And for me, as well as the working with the one-on-one with people individually, it's about, especially with Gift of Healing TV, it's about supporting others to get their message out there. Because how many lives can one person touch? But if one person supports others to get themselves out there, how many more lives can we all touch? So, and I know this is very much, I think, what David's trying to do as well, as we're all trying to do with what we're doing here. How many lives can we touch? The more, the better. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, great, thank you. And I'm just so delighted that all three of you are here with me today. This is a really great panel. Spirit has helped bring us all together to share our perspectives on many, many different topics related to the idea of soul empowerment. And as I briefly mentioned at the start, it's really all about finding ways for us to live our lives from that place of our um, the authentic truth of who we really are, rather than some story we make up in our heads and then try and present to the people out there in order to be liked or loved or appreciated or to to get laughs or whatever it is that we try to do with those little I guess representations that we put out into the world. So hopefully we can all learn from each other and we can share the message of authenticity so that we can, really tap into that ultimate essence of who we really are and live our lives completely fulfilled and completely happy and full of joy and gratitude and all that stuff. And as I said, we also happen to be human beings. So we deal with the same issues that everybody else deals with. And as I said, the big one coming up right now is holidays. And Gail, I'm going to let you start us off because I know you said you're right in the thick of it and you really want to dive into this conversation. So share with us your perspective on what this really means and how it impacts you.
Yeah, I really want to acknowledge that while the holidays, like, I have many, many happy memories of the holidays, celebrating and learning new traditions, having traditions. And I think that often gets played up in our society, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I also want to acknowledge that it's not all snowflakes and cupcakes and cookies and, you know, that it can be really complicated. It can be complicated at a level of beyond just having to navigate personalities, right? Like some of us have um, traumatic childhoods, and sometimes family members haven't acknowledged that, and so it kind of creates this inner conflict of, I actually don't feel comfortable or safe around these people, and yet I'm supposed to do X, Y, and Z. I'm supposed to, go to so and so's house for the holidays, and it can create a lot of stress and anxiety, um, whether it's something as simple as I don't get along with, Aunt Sue, or, my family is completely in denial of certain things, and I actually don't feel emotionally safe, physically safe, what have you. So there's a broad spectrum of potential pitfalls, fear, anxiety that comes up. And I wanted to put that into the space today because it's, we don't talk about that a lot. And I think a lot of people grapple with that and struggle with that. And so for me, like, I know I've struggled with it for years, and for many years completely abandoned and ignored what I needed and wanted in order to actually be at peace around the holidays. And I think that that's really something that I want. If there's one takeaway, right? Like, one takeaway from what I say today is really giving yourself the time and the space, and taking the time and the space to get clear about how you want to feel around the holidays. How do you want to feel? Because that's going to be your compass for all the decisions that you need to make. Like, where do I go? Who's going to be there? Do I want to travel? All of that, right? But to really get clear and honest with yourself. How do I want to feel? And let that be your guide.
Well, you covered a lot of ground there, Gail, and yeah, I resonate with a lot of it. I think the key phrase that came up with me for me as you were speaking was supposed to, have to. Those are like, oh my God, it's an obligation. I have to do this. It's that's kind of the energy. And I remember when I was a kid, when Christmas was coming around, sure, I was all excited because Santa Claus was supposed to come, and I'd I'd make I'd go and see Santa Claus, and I'd tell him I want one thing, and whatever. And then, of course, Mommy's right behind me, listening, or if she doesn't hear, she's saying, "So, what did you and Santa talk about?" And the whole silliness of this whole Santa Claus thing, trying to pretend like there's this guy who's going to come down a chimney, and geez, I hope there's no kids watching this. But it I don't know. There was something about it that just didn't feel right, but that's what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to write a list. You're supposed to, so that people know what you want. And I think that's not really a gift anymore. That's just people, taking care of some. It's like a shopping list. Oh, you got to go shopping, and you got to buy this and this and this and this, and that's not really a gift when it comes that way, in my mind. The other thing is, why on earth do I have to give a gift to every bloody person in my entire family? What's up with that? There are some people I just assume not give a gift to. What I'd rather have is, let's forget about the gifts at Christmas or during any holiday season for that matter. And I say, when I am moved to get a gift for you, I'm going to do it spontaneously, no matter what the day of the week or the day of the year is. That's what feels more authentic to me. I don't know. That's just me. Maybe I'm a little crazy, but I honestly, I don't want people to just give me gifts because they feel like they're under some obligation to do so. What I want for the holidays for myself is just connection. That's all I want. Just to have an opportunity for us all to get together for dinner, talk a little bit about our lives, maybe share some gratitudes that we have about what's going on, and then maybe have a drink of wine, or, well, I don't drink wine, but some people do. Have a toast, that sort of thing. Just to acknowledge each other and to be present with each other. To me, that is what the holidays really are supposed to be all about. So I kind of went on a bit of a rant there. I'm sorry. That took a lot longer than I expected it to. So I'll stop now, and Sarah or Scott, whoever's feeling called, please speak
Hi.
up.
And this must be the elder part of it, because as it has gotten further and further, I feel more and more much the same way you do. Thanksgiving has always been my favorite because there was no expectation of gifts. There was just connection. In my family, my parents' family, and then in my married life, there was always the stragglers, right? The few stragglers, those people who didn't have anybody anywhere else to go. And we would invite them in. There was always room because, of course, when you cook on Thanksgiving, you cook for 400 and 15
And
people show up. And so you
that's
have all
right.
this food. So there was always enough food, but it was the connections and that gratitude. My sister was always one for saying, okay, everybody, before we eat, let's go around the table and just say one thing we're grateful for. Because to her, Thanksgiving was giving thanks, truly giving thanks and being grateful. And half of everybody was like, "Arr." but it just that feeling of, hey, this is why we're here. And to be able to see and make the connection to cousins and aunts and uncles and extended family and friends during that time period. Christmas, I had three daughters, and so Christmas was always, my wife always felt that if the room wasn't full and you could walk in it, it wasn't a good Christmas. It had to be overstuffed. It had to have so many things, no matter if they played with it, for an hour and then put it away in the closet, and then a year later we had to make room for more toys. But it's that expectation that you were talking about, David, of why do we have to? Why do we have to do that? My greatest memories of an adult Christmases are when we gave to somebody else. There was one Christmas that came down that 2 weeks before Christmas, my brother-in-law got laid off, and then he got hurt the next day. So they literally had no money coming in, and they had three daughters. So I looked at my wife looked at me, and we went shopping a week before Christmas for all of her girls' stuff. My three daughters, said, "We don't want anything. We want to make sure they did." They were much younger, and they wanted to make sure that their cousins had a Christmas. So Christmas Eve, we went over and we filled their living room. We sat, we talked, we did all of those things, and that's a memory that my entire family always had. The second
Wow.
one was when we were first. I apologize. I really want to tell this story. We're living on a third floor walk up. On the first floor was a 92-year-old woman who owned the house, along with her daughter, who was 66, much younger. So, so they had this. Saw that they had this fake Christmas tree built in 1950, and it was literally a broomstick painted green with holes in it that they would put these rods in, and then that's what she had. And she had had it for 30 years. Her husband had died early on, and she had had this for 30 years. So my wife and I went and bought it. It cost us all of $20 for the tree. But after she went to bed on Christmas Eve, we went and set it up. We took all her ornaments off, and then we had all these extra ornaments. We just decorated the tree. And we went down the next morning on Christmas morning, and she said, "I've never seen anything like it." I said, "What?" Now, her mother was 92. She said, "My mother's been sitting in that room for the last 3 hours. She won't come out. She keeps looking at the tree and saying, it's the most beautiful tree I've ever seen." So for what took us an hour to be able to give to somebody meant the world to her. She passed that next summer. But just being able to connect like that, I don't remember what we gave each other for that Christmas. I don't remember anything else for that Christmas, but I remember that, and it sticks out in that giving and that connecting with other people. That always stands out for me at this time of the year, and it's when I feel closest to the essence of what the season brings.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Scott. That is a. I think that you kind of describe the essence of the spirit of the season, you know? Um, right. Sarah, I'm going to pass the torch to you.
I'm listening to all of this, and we we do things differently. We don't, because we don't have Thanksgiving here. But our family, my youngest sister and myself, we're technically on our own. So we don't have, and Jackie's got 3 kids with 5 grandkids, but I don't have any kids. But I obviously have my 5 nieces and nephews, and now 9 great nieces and nephews. And it got to the stage where the family got big. It got really big, in spite of the fact my parents were only children. But they had 3 of us, and it's just expanded. And we actually, several years ago, pre-COVID, agreed that we weren't going to do Christmas presents. Now, I'm not saying that my sisters don't for their children and their grandchildren. I'm not saying they don't. But we have literally, because being on my own, that is suddenly an awful lot of people to buy for on a limited income. And it's being honest, my youngest sister, because of what she's doing, she's actually on a limited income. And when you're on a limited income, and so it's an agreement, we don't. My mother for years haven't given her a present per se, but I make sure she gets an Indian head massage because she loves those. And as I give that to her anyway. But my sisters, we don't exchange gifts. Sort of with my nieces and nephews, once they got to 18, it was just like, that's it, folks, sort of going beyond that. And I've never started it with the great nieces and nephews, not because I don't care, but it's being realistic. If the funds are limited, you have to say, and it's more to the point, it's about making sure, even if it isn't at Christmas, that there is a time in the year when you get to see everyone, not necessarily all together. As I've got older, I'm going to be perfectly honest. It's great having the younger generation, but they are noisy and they are a handful. And I never had kids, so I'm so not into that at all. It's great. But when you get them all together, the noise is just way too much for me. And I accept that. I will go and I will spend a bit of time and be grateful I can come home. And then my mother is obviously that much older. She's 86 now. And again, she loves seeing her daughters, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. But the noise, mind you, she's going deaf, so it's not so bad for her. But the noise can get too much. And you put the families together, and kids will be kids. They will argue. They will cause problems for one of the children. We had our family Christmases. We absolutely did. Because it was, my parents were only children, it was with their parents. And it was always a family Christmas with both lots of grandparents. Mm-hmm. Do I have memories of those? No, because of what I went through in my very early years. I was a very unhappy child. I don't have memories of that. I am very aware that the grandparents, Boxing Day, which was my grandfather's birthday, the family that lived next door to them, they were also included. Mum, dad, son, daughter, and the grandmother. It was, so we had relatively big family Christmases, but nothing like the size they are now. And I think it's that, isn't it? It's really thinking about, actually, are we getting quality time, or are we doing this because we feel we've got to, that we have to? And it's providing we can get to see everybody throughout the year, get the quality time, so I can get to talk to my nieces and my nephews and find out what's going on in their lives. Some of them I see more regularly than others, because a couple of them live very close, but one of them I hardly ever see anyway. But one I see a lot because I look after her dog twice a week, but it's that, isn't it? It's that, do we have the quality time with our family? Do we listen? And this was very much brought home to me. And I know this had nothing to do with family per se, but I did a Reiki day a couple of weeks ago. And although I only had two of them here for the day, and they got a reattunement and whatever, and it was a really powerful day for them. It really was for both of them. They were both in desperate need of that energy boost. But we were sat having lunch, and you'd be asked a question, you'd be answering it, and then you get interrupted. And I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, she comes from a big family. She's got two, I think maybe three sisters. They've got kids. So although she never had children, her husband, who sadly died just over a year ago, he had two children. They've got children. So it's a huge family. And that's what big families do, because everybody's trying to have that, be that center of attention, and they keep interrupting. They don't let you finish what you're saying. And so maybe for me, I've got to this, but I did find myself thinking, oh, and it's just like, no, just let it go. But is it a matter of to try and be calmer within yourself? If you get interrupted, just stop. Just let them get on with it. And maybe it's just better to listen, because I don't know about any of you, but we find ourselves I find myself back in the family, them all interrupting. And my mother is a classic for interrupting, even if there's only two of you. She really is. And it's just thinking about, okay, just sit and listen. Don't participate. Don't let yourself participate in being the interrupter. I've got to take the limelight from you, because that's actually what it is about. And it's helping others to feel listened to, with the hope that others may do the same for you. But it's, where do we start? And I think we have to start that. There has to be somebody that is prepared to sit back and just, and then if somebody turns around and says, but you're not saying anything, then maybe you can say, well, if so, everybody will listen to me the way I've listened to everybody else, then maybe I will talk. But maybe we have to. Maybe we have to be blunt and get people to listen.
Yeah. So there's lots of stuff here again. I'm hearing a number of things. Well, from all three of you and from myself, causes of stress on the holidays or during the holidays. One is the sense that we are obligated to participate in certain rituals, certain activities, the gift buying and all that kind of stuff, which can put a heavy burden on people who, like you say, Sarah, may not have a lot of money to spend. That's the one thing. Another thing has to do with, all of the interactions that you are supposedly required to participate in. You may not necessarily want to do that. You may not want to interact with particular people in your family, or maybe they're not even family. Maybe they're just friends that show up, And then, of course, there's that other piece of trying to have a conversation and not being able to say what's in your heart because of constant interruptions. I mean, all of these can be significant points of stress if we allow them to, drive our attention up into our ego mind and try to regain connection to the being the center of attention. If you have a desire to be a center of attention, it's probably related to something in your ego mind, because your soul doesn't really have that need, right? So I think this is an opportunity for us to bring our own level of awareness to a higher level. And, that might not be easy, especially when you're dealing with family, where lots of old stories from way back in the past start to get activated, and when that sort of thing happens, it makes the challenge of staying connected in your heart that much more difficult. So it takes practice. It takes, I'd say more than just practice. It takes a deep compassion for yourself, saying, all right, I'm having a challenge right now. I see that I'm feeling this. Great. be aware of that, and then say, guys, I'm really enjoying this, but I got to go step outside and take a breath of fresh air. I'll be back in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, and just do what you have to do to bring yourself back into that calm center place. So there's lots of things that are going to trigger us during these holiday seasons, and there are lots of ways that we can deal with those triggers by allowing our soul to stay in command of the situation rather than allowing our ego minds to come back and take over. Dale, Scott, what do you have to say about all that?
So one of the things that I'm hearing, well, a few things that I'm hearing, is that we always have, we've talked about this on other episodes, we have choice and we have power. And from the examples that have been shared here, I hear that in them with Scott and his wife, choosing to create how they want to experience the holidays, and how that's more aligned with their soul, right? Like being able to give and to create and bring joy into someone else's life is really more in line with how they want to experience it, rather than just receiving a bunch of stuff, right? And Sarah, with your example of agreements, setting agreements, we have something very similar with my family too. Most of the little ones aren't so little anymore. It's actually, my kids are the youngest, and they're getting up there. They're in the teens and tweens, and they're wanting less stuff. They're wanting more experiences, or cash is always king with kids, so there's that too. And yeah, we started to set different agreements of, no gifts for the adults. We don't need to do that. We want to spend time together. My husband's family is Polish, and so there's some really fun traditional things. We make pierogies for a day, and it's a fun thing that the family does together. It's connection, it's creating, it's a lovely tradition that's not so new for me, but was new when I first came into the family. That's one of my favorite, and the kids love it too. They don't help as much as the adults do, but so you get to create what you want when you're honest enough with yourself, when you're ready to release the should haves, or I have to, and speak for what's true in your heart. That's what I'm hearing, and that's kind of a point that I want to drive home, is that you have the power to create what you want. And yes, absolutely, there are going to be people or situations that are going to trigger you. And sometimes we're good at taking a step back and taking a pause and recognizing, okay, I'm triggered, and I get to choose how I want to be. And sometimes you get triggered, and that's okay too. That's okay too. And it's important to remember to own your piece of that.
Exactly
However
right.
that looks like for you. So I love, David, your example of like stepping out and taking a walk. Like that was something I don't know if I've shared this on this program before. I know I've shared this story before. I was at a family gathering, and I made some decisions beforehand about how I wanted to experience. It wasn't Christmas or Thanksgiving, but it was another holiday. And I made some decisions ahead of time. Like this is what I'm available for. This is what I'm not available for. And one of the things was gossip. Like I just didn't want to. Sometimes people can get gossipy. And hey, I've been gossipy too. But in this particular instance, it wasn't for me. And just making that decision allowed me to, instead of get triggered and sort of be like, there we go again, here it is again, and sort of getting irritated with it, I immediately heard it and just stood up and left. I didn't even say anything to anybody. I just stood up, I left, I went for a walk, I came back, and that part of the conversation was over. And so it's really important to remember that we can't control the people in the room. And that's where the ego comes into play because we want to control what's happening around us. But the reality is we can't control people in the room. All we can control is our own decisions, our own choices, our own emotions, our own energy.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Scott, you
And
were
with that, to piggyback on that, Gail, is acceptance. Um, we want people to, sometimes we get in those social situations, and we want them to act and react in a certain way. We have the expectation. It's like giving a gift, and you really put a lot of thought into it. You put your heart and soul in it, they didn't know that it took you 3 weeks to find this exact thing that you wanted to give them, and you give it to them, and they're like, oh, and your expectation. So it's that expectation of what you expect to happen, what you expect things to be like. And I found that for me, it was just acceptance. It's what is. This is, yes, I put a lot into it, but they don't know that. They they're not slighting me. They're just reacting to what's in front of them. David, something you said really triggered. Through the course of the year, I give things like on my birthday. I always make sure I give things to other people. I don't necessarily like accepting the gifts. And during the course of the year, I will buy flowers because now long ago and far away, my wife trained me when I first got married. I would do something really stupid, which was a common occurrence, and so I'd buy flowers. So anytime I brought flowers into the marriage, it was okay. What did you do wrong? So, and then there was the expectation of during certain holidays you bring flowers or whatever else. So instead of that, I would bring flowers because I would take beautiful flowers, wanted them. I thought of you. Here they are, and that set a different example and for me about giving, but also it took the onus off of flowers being a bad thing. Um,
right.
so it's that giving when it's there. It's giving when it's authentic. It's giving when it's truly from here, not because you're expected to. And that's where expectations, I think, all of us in family situation, family dynamics, brothers and sisters. I mean, they start in on things that happened when you were as a teenager, right? I mean, I'm over 60 now, and those things just don't fly anymore.
I think
So,
expectations started a lot long before teenage years.
oh Lord, yes, oh Lord, yes.
Yeah.
But it's that expectation of um, what should be, what is, and it's just for me, it's just allowing what happens and accepting it. Um,
Right.
not trying to
I
control.
you know I was going to say that, well, first of all, I think expectation is the mother of disappointment. And because no matter what you think you expect, very often what you get is not exactly going to match up to your expectation anyway. Might be close, but it might not be exactly what you expect. So anytime you have an expectation, you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. You might as well set aside the expectation and just offer it without any kind of expectation of a particular outcome. That's really what attachment is, right? So if you can release that attachment and just simply offer something from your heart and let it do whatever it does. And bear in mind that sometimes people may not really get the import of a gift until days or weeks or months later. And maybe the following year, you're going to hear from somebody say, Scott, when you gave me that gift, I was really kind of stunned. I didn't know what to say. And I just, it was a beautiful gift. It really touched me deeply. Now you know how that person reacted, but their external behavior may not have looked anything like what they shared with you. So your expectation or your observation of what might be happening may be also completely wrong. So again, this is the idea of letting go of expectation. Um, the other thing I wanted to say in regards to what you were talking about, Gail, is, you know, I like the idea that you can just stand up and walk out in the middle of a conversation, and maybe, I'm sure you didn't do it with any particular flair or anything. You just
No
decided,
fanfare.
yeah, that's right. Just kind of sneak out and let them go ahead and do what they're doing. But you don't have to leave. You can just simply say, this is not something I want to participate in. You can tell people that.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'm not going to participate in it. I'm here to share my connection with you, and I want to hear what you all have to say, but I really am not a big fan of this kind of conversation. So, if you're fully grounded in who you really are, you can say no, thank you. And I know Sarah, she's a big proponent of learning how to say no. So we can talk about that in a second. But one thing I learned a while back, this is a really important distinction to make. It's one thing to resist what is. Okay, that tendency to resist what is can really cause all kinds of stress in your body. But refusal is quite different. This is an active process where you're saying no, thank you. Okay, so refusal and resistance are different. Try and keep that in mind, and you can refuse something without being rude or nasty or anything. You can just say, I appreciate your invitation, but I'm going to pass. And now this brings me back to your conversation, Scott, back at the beginning when you were talking about, was it your daughter or somebody who wanted to have everybody say something around the table? I like that idea, and I know that some people are going to be uncomfortable with it. So when I do something like that around a large table, I say, you know what, I think it'd be fun to just share what we're grateful for, and not do it in any particular order. I found myself sometimes resisting that, and I'll use that word resisting, saying, I really don't want to do this. And then I'll hear a few people talk about what they're grateful for, and that'll trigger something for me that I'll say, oh yeah, I can see that I'm actually grateful for that. You see? So if you allow them to go in a popcorn style rather than around in a particular order, then you may get participation from more people that way. Just a suggestion. Anyway, Sarah, I'm sorry. I want to hear what you have to say about all this, because I know you're sitting there. You seem to be ready to speak.
Oh, I just love listening to it all, because I think it's so important. We are all different. We're all unique. We've had different experiences. And I love the fact that you had the courage to get up and walk out. And I really do hear what you're saying, David, about saying, I don't wish to participate. But by removing yourself, you allow yourself to let those energies, and they can be very negative energies around gossip. And so you're not even really allowing those energies in. You're saying, no, this really isn't for me. I'm out of here. But yes, doing it discreetly, if you can. Very difficult if you're actually sitting round the table eating, because our lot do not be quiet while they're eating. Conversations are going on all over the place. They really are. And it is the no. It is about saying, no, this isn't for me. You were saying about letting go of attachment. So it's about detachment. It's about being detached from outcomes. And I suppose that is something I was very much taught when learning metamorphic technique, having to be detached from outcomes. And it served me really well, not just in my work, but within the family. Of, okay, whatever's going on within the family, I'm quite happy to be detached from it all at times. I really am. There are times when the universe keeps you out of things too. Different things. Last year, with sort of the fall that gave me bruised ribs, sprained wrist, sort of stopped me from driving, then the bump that kept me off the road for 10 weeks. It's the universe. Listen to the universe. If things are being made slightly more difficult, maybe you're not meant to be there. We're not sure what's happening with the family this year. Sort of, it's going to be very fragmented. But then I was talking to my middle sister, and I said, my oldest nephew has just taken over a pub, and he's doing really well with it from what we can gather. And I said to her, do you know what I'd really like us all to do? Is the whole lot of us, rather than going to somebody else's pub and putting money in somebody else's pocket, I'd love, but it would be 20 odd of us. And I said, and it sounds like Jamie would have the room. I know it'd be a bit of a busman's holiday, he'd be eating in his own pub, but I'd love for the whole lot of us to be able to go and be able to have a meal in the pub and make sure he knows he's not paying for it.
Right. Yeah.
That we're all prepared to pay for ourselves. You know, he's got a brother and a sister with kids. He's got
Right.
his mum. He's got his grandmother. He's got his aunts. So yes, there'd be a lot of us, and it would probably be very noisy too with all the children. But you know what? That would be lovely to be able to do. It's supportive of a young man who's going to be 40 in January, but he's still a young man. He's going to be 40 in January. Supporting him rather than going and giving that business to somebody else, but taking away all that pressure of having to cater. Because that's
I really like that idea. I think that's a beautiful gesture. And also, you know, everybody leave a big tip. that's kind of what it's all about. This conversation is really, really, really moving and shaking and stuff. And one of the things that I remember we talked about this during our conversation is during our planning conversation, this idea that, you know, arguments are likely to happen during any kind of a holiday gathering, any kind of a gathering where you have people that you mostly care about. You know, there's likely to be some kind of disagreement, arguments, voices can get raised, emotions can get charged up and stuff. And I think, you know, Sarah, you talked about this at the beginning, this idea of if we can just learn to listen to each other, we start, rather than trying to wait for a moment where we can just dive in with our side of an opinion, if we can pause and just listen and understand the full depth of what it is the other person is saying, and then ask the other person to do the same when it's my turn to speak, what you can do is you can understand that even though you seem to be arguing in opposition to one another, the reality is you're both trying to get to the same result. Most of the time that's true. And so if we can learn to listen to each other and understand what the other person is saying, and I mean not just listening and then waiting for an opportunity to speak, but rather listening as deeply as possible, right? And then being able to say, wow, that sounds really like it's really important to you. That sounds like what you're really interested in is this. Is that true? You know, and then you could say, wow, because that's exactly what I'm looking for. It looks like we are both trying to find the same thing, and maybe we just have two different ways of getting there. So this leads us to that statement that I think, Scott, you said, where there's three sides to every perspective, right? There's your side, there's my side, and then there's the truth that's somewhere in the middle. So if we can find that truth that's in the middle, a lot of the stress of our event is just going to slowly fade away, especially if we both take the time and the energy to listen with our hearts rather than with our ego mind heads.
I think within the family gatherings, it's something that we've all been very good with on the whole, is making sure that the individual who's doing hosting is helped as much as they will let us help. It's being there to sort of help with the cooking if necessary, help with the preparation, help with the dishing up, you know, sort of, and it's usually sort of very much a buffet. Well, it's done like a buffet type thing, everybody helps themselves, but then clearing away and bringing out the puddings and clearing away and helping with the washing up. I know she's got a dish, my sister's got a dishwasher, but there's still stuff that needs to be washed up by hand. It's as many as possible participating in the supporting of, and not leaving it to one individual. We've got very good over the years. Mum used to do everything, and it was very difficult to go and help her because she just it was her way of doing it. It's Sarah, can you bring this? Can you bring that? Can you bring the other? Yes. Because some of us have our specialities of things that we do and that we can bring that everybody enjoys. And so it's, how can we help so that one person isn't doing it all? You're taking the stress. They've still got enough stress, but you're taking some of it off. You're walking through the door with hot stuff that is going to be going on the table. It just needs to go into the warming oven or whatever it is, just that extra bit. You're just supporting, and it's not down to one person. And I think the bigger the family gatherings, the more important it is to say to whoever's hosting it, what can I do? What can I bring? And being there to support.
Yeah, I think I love that idea, and I think that's also, it's just part of being part of a family. And I know that there are some mothers and or fathers who really like to have control of the whole thing, and they want to be the big boss. They want that to happen or whatever. I found that sometimes all it takes is one person who isn't directly involved in the preparations to stand up and say, I think I'd like to organize a cleanup detail. Who's with me? And then just get a few volunteers. And before you know it, everybody's going to help out with the cleanup. All you need to do is get a couple of people who are willing to say, "Yep, I'm just tell me what you want me to do." Okay, let's take all the plates. So you bring the plates and empty out the trash into the trash here, put it over here. I'll start washing the dishes. Somebody else can start drying. And before you know it, it's done. It becomes a project that everybody can participate in. Personally, I kind of enjoy cleanup. I mean, I'm weird that way. Sorry. I like doing dishes. I don't mind sweeping floors. These are things that I find kind of meditative when I do them. So to me, they release stress when I do stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe it's just about moving the body or something. Scott, what do you have to say?
You bring up so many things that remind me of my family, where my father he would cook the ham or the turkey. That was his one time of the year that he cooked. So he would have to cut it and he would have to carve it, and he has special knife to carve the turkey, to carve the ham. It's all that he did. He didn't do anything else. My mother did everything else, and he'd have this great expectation of everybody, just throwing words of encouragement about how wonderful the ham was or how wonderful the turkey was, and then cleaning up, and my sisters would sit down, and all the guys would get up and start clearing everything away, because it was the one time they said during the course of things that the guys got to actually do the work. And much like yourself, I would always clean and clear and do those things. But it's those family dynamics, and being able to reconnect and being able to listen. And Sarah, you brought this up so much, is that the listening part of it. And um, I always used to listen to be able to speak, because I wanted the rebuttal. I wanted to tell my brother what an idiot he was because he said something. I wanted to,
Right.
I needed that rebuttal. And now I just take that kind of half step back and I just listen. And there are so many times I don't say a word with my family. I just understand. And it has caused so much less stress, anxiety, arguments, disagreements, whatever, because I haven't jumped in, because I haven't felt I needed to say something. And it really is for my entire life. I was always that one, had to put something in. I had to add to it. I had to be there. And now that I'm at this point where I don't have to, things are much calmer, much more peaceful. And Sarah, much like yourself, I like it when it's not so hectic. I really, really do.
Yeah, me too. Dale.
I want to add a little twist on the support side of things. as a recovering overfunctioner, I found myself in sticky situations of supporting, um, and learned some lessons around this. So I would say, yes, absolutely, communication, 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 and yeah, it's important to support. Absolutely, I'm 100% on board with that. And what I would say as sort of like the 200 level version of this, right? Or the 300 level version of this is ask, because sometimes people they don't want the help. They don't want you to help with that thing. So instead of just sort of going in and doing the thing, like I'm with you, David. Like I'd love to do cleanup. I I love that stuff. And I think there is like some sort of like it moves your energy in your body, and there's something about that for me as well. Um, but you know, maybe your family member wants you to go chop tomatoes or something instead, right? And so the simple check-in, instead of making assumptions or instead of doing what you're used to doing in your own home, to go in and ask, would you like some help with this? How can I help you? And I know, Sarah, that's kind of what you were saying. But I've also been in the situation of being at a family member's house and sort of being that whirlwind of energy, cleaning stuff up and whatever. And the host later on expressing like, I don't want you doing that. Right. And so there is a little like the check-in. I just love the check-in first before jumping in to doing what we think should be done, or how we want to support people. There's a lot of talk about like the golden rule, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the platinum rule, but basically the platinum rule is treat people how they want to be treated. And you don't know how they want to be treated unless you ask them. So I think that like we could probably do a whole I think we've talked about this before, right? Like doing a whole episode on communication and really being effective at listening and asking and checking in and not making assumptions. These The holidays brings all of those skills to the forefront, and it's an opportunity to really practice and hone those skills if you so choose.
I agree totally with that. You know, and I also agree that sometimes people don't want the kind of help you want to offer. And I'm not I'm not advocating to just dive in and necessarily take over. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The way I like to offer, if I'm not going to do the full cleanup thing or something, I might say something like, I really appreciate you having me over here, and I would like to help. So why don't you give me a task that I can do to support you? That way, you've expressed your interest, and they can say, I really appreciate your offer, and I got this all covered. Please go sit down and enjoy time with the rest of the people. Great. Now I've done my bit, and the communication has been expressed, and I might say before I leave, great, but remember my offer still stands. You know, because I know you're doing a lot here, and I really would like to help out if I can. So we're getting close to the end, and I know, Sarah, you got to take off. So would you like to close us out with a few brilliant words of wisdom?
How about soul words of wisdom?
How about some brilliant soul words of wisdom?
From light language. So
Oh boy.
listen with your heart and your soul and let go of the mind and the ego. Let's see what they wish to share with us. Coach Tanaka Tae Nak Tahana Hishinimia Nos Tanaka Ete Miata Yash an Aiki A Noeche Ana E Ikata Paataro no Koshia Ne A Akta Mukote Amai Isharanta Aiki O Intereka ta amata koia Nastak ta aini hasho Ta ant takai Nishta taramakishtomai Taranka ei Cheatakama Oshtayama.
Thank you.
And our heart and our soul will have understood every word of that. I didn't. Take care, be safe, stay well. See you all soon. Bye.
Bye,
See you
Sarah.
later, Sarah. And Scott, how would you like to close us out today?
The holidays can be misery or they can be pure joy. I find the joy in what the holidays bring and what they mean. Just reflect on it. If giving is your thing, find a way to do that that makes the most impact for you. If hosting is what you do and you love to do, bring it forward. And if what I used to do is take a week off in between Christmas and New Year's, and I would make each day I would go to visit a different family member so that we could just talk and we could really, really enjoy each other. And for me, that's what the holidays really mean, is just family connections and really being grateful for them being in your life. And I want to thank everybody out there for viewing, seeing us, listening to us, and hopefully what we had to say touched somewhere in your life.
Beautiful. Thank you, Scott. Gail.
Yeah, I want to close by saying thank you to you, David and Sarah and Scott, for this particular conversation. I feel like I got a lot out of this in a way that, I always get a lot out of our discussions. I don't know, there was something a little different about this one where I sort of felt like I was, yes, on the panel, but also sitting in the audience and receiving a lot of higher vibrations coming through. And so I just want to acknowledge you all for that. It's definitely, this is going to be a tricky holiday for me. I recently lost my mom. So it's kind of reorienting through all of that. And I know, a lot of people find it difficult around the holidays after losing loved ones and family members. And yeah, I'm actually feeling inspired and I'm feeling better about the holidays. And so I hope that those who are tuning in are feeling that way too. We take our little shares, our stories, and our tips to heart and really create something beautiful this holiday season.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gail. And so I guess what I'd like to say is, first of all, bless you, Sarah. Bless you, Scott. Bless you, Gail. We are doing just our little part to try and help raise the consciousness of the planet by doing our own work and sharing what we learn to other people. So hopefully this, I say we bless ourselves and have compassion and love and gratitude for ourselves because we have made the choice to to make acceptance and awareness and enlightenment a high priority in our lives. And because we have made that choice, we are creating little ripples that are heading out into the ether, into the universe, and hopefully having a positive impact. And I do believe it is a positive impact. So I'm grateful for that. And I am also just grateful that we get to share this stuff every month. Something new, but also something familiar, deeply familiar to our soul. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for being here and watching this episode. And remember, you can catch recordings of this and every other episode on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. Until next time, this is David McLeod, along with Gail, Scott, and Sarah, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. Bye-bye for now.